The first time anyone noticed her, it was because the room had gone unusually quiet. Conversations thinned, chairs stopped scraping, and even the steady hum of the old ceiling fans seemed to soften, as if the air itself was listening. She stood near the back wall of the community hall, small in stature, shoulders squared in a way that suggested she had learned long ago how to make herself steady when the world expected her to bend. Her name was Lena Morales, and she had not come to speak. She had come to return a folded envelope she had found on the sidewalk outside the Veterans Center that morning. It held a donation meant for families of sailors lost at sea, and she wanted to be sure it reached the right hands. Admiral Thomas Hale was at the front of the room, listening to a young officer read out a list of names. He was a man known for his discipline and composure, someone who had commanded fleets and negotiated crises with a calm that became legend. His hair had gone silver early, and his posture still carried the quiet authority of decades at sea. To the public, he was a symbol of strength. To those who knew him well, he was also a man who believed deeply in order, in systems, in the idea that if everyone did their part, the world could be held together. Lena waited, patient, fingers wrapped around the envelope. She had not planned to draw attention, but when the officer paused and asked if there were any last matters before closing, Lena felt a gentle pressure in her chest. The kind that came when you knew staying silent would be easier, but speaking might be right. She raised her hand. It trembled, just slightly. The Admiral's eyes moved to her. He gave a courteous nod, the kind he had perfected over years of public service. "Yes, miss," he said. Her voice, when it came, was clear but soft. She explained about the envelope, how she'd found it, how she didn't want it to be lost or misused. There was nothing remarkable about the story itself, just a small act of honesty. Someone at the front thanked her and stepped forward to take it. The moment could have ended there. The room could have returned to its low buzz of routine gratitude. But as Lena passed the envelope forward, her sleeve caught on the edge of the table. It tugged her shirt upward, just enough to reveal what she had worked carefully to keep covered. She froze. It was a fraction of a second, but it felt endless. She could have pulled the fabric back down immediately and pretended nothing had happened. Instead, she inhaled, steadying herself, and let the moment stand. There were marks along her ribs, faint but unmistakable. Not fresh, not dramatic, but clearly the lasting evidence of something endured. They told a story without words, a story of injury and healing, of pain met with patience. No one gasped, no one pointed. But the room went still again, and this time the silence carried weight. Admiral Hale felt it before he fully understood it. His eyes, trained to assess quickly, registered the change. He saw her posture, the way she did not hunch or hide, the quiet dignity with which she stood. Then he saw the marks. His breath caught, not in shock, but in recognition. He had seen similar scars before, on sailors pulled from wreckage, on medics who had shielded others with their own bodies, on people who had paid a price without asking for recognition. He had spent much of his life dealing in abstractions, numbers, strategies, policies. Even when the human cost was discussed, it often came in reports and briefings, filtered through layers of formality. Standing there, looking at Lena, the cost felt suddenly immediate. She lowered her arm and met his gaze. There was no accusation in her eyes, no demand, only honesty. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I just thought it was important to return what wasn't mine." The Admiral found that his rehearsed response would not come. The words he had used so many times, "Thank you for your honesty. We appreciate your integrity," felt thin. He nodded, slowly, and the officer beside him took over, offering Lena a seat. She declined, choosing instead to remain standing near the wall. As the meeting concluded, people filed out in small groups, murmuring about schedules and plans. Lena waited until the room had nearly emptied, unsure why she felt the need to stay. Perhaps she wanted to be certain the envelope was safe. Perhaps she was simply gathering herself after the unexpected exposure. Admiral Hale watched her from across the room. He felt an unfamiliar unease, not because of what he had seen, but because of what it stirred. He remembered a briefing from years ago, about a coastal town struck by a storm. Resources stretched thin, aid delayed by procedure. He had approved the timeline. It had seemed reasonable at the time. Now, he wondered about the people who had waited. When Lena turned to leave, he found himself stepping forward. "Miss Morales," he said, surprised that he knew her name. He had glanced at the sign-in sheet earlier, barely thinking about it. Now it mattered. She stopped and faced him. Up close, he saw that she was younger than he'd thought. Her face lined not by age, but by experience. Her eyes were steady. "I wanted to thank you personally," he said. "Not just for returning the donation, but for coming here at all." She gave a small smile. "It's the least I could do. This place helped my brother. He served on the Coast Guard. After his accident, they made sure he wasn't forgotten." "Your brother," the Admiral repeated. "Is he?" "He's alive," she said, "because someone pulled him out when it was dangerous to do so. Because someone else stayed late to fill out paperwork. Because a nurse checked on him one more time before going home. A lot of small kindnesses added up." The Admiral nodded. He understood that language. Small actions, cumulative effect. It was how fleets moved, how missions succeeded. Yet hearing it framed this way, through her lived experience, shifted something inside him. They spoke for a few more minutes, about ordinary things. Lena worked 2 jobs, helped care for her brother, volunteered when she could. She did not dwell on her own injuries, and the Admiral did not ask. He sensed that the story belonged to her, and she would share it when and if she chose. As she left, he felt a quiet resolve settle over him. That night, he could not sleep. The image of Lena, standing calmly in the sudden silence, replayed in his mind. He thought about the distance between decisions and consequences, about how easily systems could become insulated from the people they were meant to serve. The next morning, he requested a review of the aid distribution process for veterans' families. Not a surface-level check, but a deep one. He asked for stories, not just statistics. He insisted on hearing directly from those affected. Some of his staff were surprised. This was not how things were usually done, but his tone left no room for argument. Weeks passed. Lena heard nothing of the Admiral and thought little of the encounter. Life continued in its familiar rhythm of work and care. Then, one afternoon, she received a letter. It was formal, bearing an official seal, but the words inside were personal. Admiral Hale thanked her again for her honesty and told her that their brief meeting had prompted changes he believed would make a real difference. He invited her to attend a small ceremony, not as an honoree, but as a guest. She hesitated. Public events made her uneasy, but her brother encouraged her. "Go," he said. "Sometimes you don't see the ripple you start." The ceremony was modest, held at the same community hall. This time, the atmosphere was different. There was a sense of anticipation, of something being acknowledged. The Admiral spoke briefly, not about himself or his career, but about responsibility. He talked about listening, about the importance of seeing the human stories behind the roles and titles. He did not mention Lena by name. He did not reference scars or wounds. Instead, he spoke of kindness that goes unnoticed and the courage it takes to stand quietly for what is right. When he finished, there was no dramatic applause, just a steady, sincere response. Afterward, he found Lena again. "I hope you don't mind," he said, "that I didn't single you out." She shook her head. "That's not why I came." He smiled. "I thought so." They stood together, watching people talk and laugh, a small community bound by shared care. The Admiral felt lighter than he had in years. He knew that not everything could be fixed, that the world would always hold hardship. But he also knew that moments like this mattered, that change often began not with grand gestures, but with the willingness to truly see one another. As Lena left the hall that day, she felt something she had not expected: hope. Not the fragile kind that depends on everything going right, but a steadier hope, rooted in the knowledge that compassion can travel farther than we imagine. She had not planned to reveal anything about herself when she first walked into that room. She had only intended to return an envelope. Yet in doing so, she had been seen, and in being seen, she had helped someone else see more clearly, too. The world did not change overnight. Systems still moved slowly, and challenges remained. But in small offices and quiet meetings, policies began to reflect stories instead of just numbers. Aid reached families a little faster. Voices that had been overlooked were invited in. Years later, Admiral Hale would look back on his long career and think not of the battles he'd commanded or the honors he'd received, but of a young woman standing calmly in a silent room, reminding him of a truth he could no longer ignore: that humanity is strongest when we meet one another with honesty, and that even the quietest acts of integrity can reshape the course of many lives. And Lena, going about her ordinary days, carried with her the gentle certainty that kindness, once given, rarely ends where it begins.